When I first watched The Wizard of Oz as a kid, I did not speak any English. There were subtitles for my language, but I couldn't read as well, so that didn't help. And yet, I was able to understand enough to be absolutely captivated and want to watch this movie again and again and again. Not understanding a word, but picking up more and more each time. There's an old Hollywood saying that the greatest movies are the ones that you can still follow even with the sound off. I don't think that's always true, but it's definitely true for old Hollywood. That's their specialty. Many of the filmmakers in old Hollywood started their careers in the silent era, where the whole game was to tell an engaging story with as few words as possible. And that mindset remained in their later work. One of the quintessential old Hollywood directors was Victor Fleming, known as a fixer hired by the studio to take over and reshape troubled productions. He directed The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind the same year, goddamn. He's the credited director. The question of who really deserves credit for this movie is a long and complex one. Either way, The Wizard of Oz represents the best of old Hollywood. It's their magic at its peak, the visual storytelling, the looks of wretched contempt from the Wicked Witch, the way the Scarecrow flails his limbs around like a newborn elephant with his trunk, the way the Tin Man's movement turned from blocky and intimidating to warm and tender as he's being oiled up. There's so much character in the way these characters move. They use simple visual elements to tell the story. The Wicked Witch burns the Scarecrow with fire, Dorothy melts the witch with water. They literally use visual elements. You can't get any more universal than that. Not to say that there's nothing going on in the dialogue. Going back to this movie in primary school after learning to read fast enough to follow the subtitles, then again as a teenager after learning English, was like rediscovering it twice over. First, all the incredible, infinitely quotable lines, then all the witty lyrics and rhymes that only work in the original language. There's so much fun and cool lines and lyrics there, and it manages to do that as a bonus feature to the visual storytelling. I already talked about this movie's use of color in my Movies That Mess With Your Senses video. How they expanded the Kansas story to make the switch to Technicolor Oz more powerful, and how they changed the silver slippers into ruby ones to enhance the magical feelings that the audience gets from color. But what I didn't mention is that this movie is the one that made the Wicked Witch green. In the original book, she's described as being pale and old, with one eye, and never leaving her castle. The green skin, dark cloak, pointy hat, the fact that she flies around on a broomstick, all became iconic to who the Wicked Witch is in pop culture. Even future adaptations that don't stick to movie iconography and say keep the silver slippers, take the Wicked Witch's look straight from the MGM movie. And I can't blame them. Everything about this movie's art direction is incredible. You know what else they turned green? The Emerald City. This is goofy. In the book, the Emerald City is not green. It only has green walls. But the wizard tricked the inhabitants into thinking the city was so bright and glorious that they had to wear green glasses at all times to protect themselves from its shine, making it appear all green. And there it is. All the book lore bullshit has no place in an old Hollywood movie. We're talking fire, water, monochrome to color, red, green, yellow, and goofy cartoonish overacting. Simple magic. Do we lose something in this process? Yeah, of course. We lose what is my favorite backstory of any fantasy character ever, the origin story of the Tin Woodman. If you don't know, the Tin Woodman was a munchkin who was going to marry the love of his life and build a house for them to live in. But the bride's mother did not approve of the marriage, so she put a curse on the woodman. When he went to chop wood to build the future home for him and his wife, his axe fell and chopped off his leg. So he went and got a tin leg to replace it. Then he went and kept working until his axe chopped off his arm. So he replaced it with a tin arm and went on working. His axe kept betraying him until he was more metal than man. When the axe finally pierced his heart, the woodman gave up. He could not love his wife anymore because he had no heart. At least, that's what he tells himself. In the movie, it's like, he's a robot or something, and his maker forgot to give him a heart. Whatever, it's fine. It's something you can say in one line and just be done with explaining. Complex backstories, intricate flashback plots just don't fly in these kinds of movies. And that's okay, because the movie didn't need to be the book. It needed to captivate me enough to want to pick up the book the moment I learned how to read. So in the script, I'm just supposed to move on, but I feel like something's missing, like to cap each section. Should we do a tier list? Fuck it, this is the tier list video. S tier. Last year, my dad told me there was a remake of The Wizard of Oz in the 70s, starring Michael Jackson as the Scarecrow, and I said, bullshit, no way. Because if there was something like that, I would know. I called my own father a liar. Because I was sure if there was a remake of The Wizard of Oz starring Michael Jackson, I would have known this a long time ago. And yet, The Wiz is a real movie, somehow. You know those Mandela Effect movies? People swear they remember movies that don't exist, saying they used to exist and were erased from the timeline? I'm like that, but the other way around. I'm sure I grew up in a universe where this movie did not exist. It's from the director of 12 Angry Men, which is widely considered to be one of the best movies of all time. And the writer of Batman and Robin. How is this real? This is like if you let a Michelin star chef cook you a meal, but he has to follow a recipe by the guy who made Batman and Robin.
That is fucking disgusting.
Jokes aside, Joel Schumacher actually made some good movies too, Falling Down especially, but people like to remember the bad stuff, you know? But okay. How is The Wiz? I'm gonna be honest, it's pretty bad.
I'm sorry, Chef.
And when I say bad, I mean Michael Jackson bad.
You can't win.
If you look at director Sidney Lumet's filmography, especially 12 Angry Men, they are the opposite of old Hollywood Wizard of Oz. The main course here is the talking, the text, and the great cinematography and fantastic acting are the ones playing a support role. But you would never guess that watching The Wiz, because here the whole thing is art direction. Oz being inspired by 70s New York, it's a giant, sprawling metropolis that is completely run down and in decay, filled with dead ballrooms in destroyed neighborhoods, abandoned theme parks, and empty libraries. The Emerald City is like a nuclear bunker for the ultra-rich. The only creatures walking outside of it are horrid mutants, forgotten losers, and hookers. This is real. This is the officially licensed Wizard of Oz remake. They dance in sweatshops, dirty parking lots, and streets full of trash. Everything in this movie is dirty and filthy trash. The Scarecrow and Tin Man are literally made out of garbage. The songs here might not be the best of any Oz movie, but they are the most rhythm and blues. So to me, they are the best actually, because my most listened to soundtrack on Spotify is The Blues Brothers. So if you give me some funky bass line, some women's choir, some jazzy muted horns, when the singer starts speaking Satchmo, talking all about shabada booby, shibada bebop, you're speaking my language, okay? I don't need any subtitles for that. Any movie that has Smokey Stevens as one of the racist crows from Dumbo. Wait. There is an obnoxious amount of songs. In the original movie, the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion each basically sang one verse of the same song. In The Wiz, each character gets a full 3-minute unique introduction number. Tin Man has two, one right after the other, and the Lion also has a duet with Dorothy like 10 minutes after his own song. In the original movie, We're Off to See the Wizard takes up about 30 seconds each time it plays. So about 2 minutes in total. Ease on Down the Road beats that by far just the first time, and then each reprise is another minute and a half. Every new location and character comes with a brand new full-length song and dance number. In fact, this movie is just about 50% songs. If that doesn't sound insane to you, here's the ratio for some other musicals you might be familiar with. I'm into the songs, but that's a lot of songs. But this isn't necessarily a problem by itself. I mean, there are musicals that are 100% songs. What it does is make another problem worse. Bear with me for a minute. I'm gonna talk about Wicked later in the video, but I'm gonna use it now as an example just to demonstrate something that I think is true for the vast majority of musicals. The songs progress the plot. Almost every song is a scene. If it wasn't a musical, those scenes would still have to be there. You would still have a scene where Elphaba and Glinda have an argument, which then turns into a tearful goodbye. It just wouldn't rhyme. But you can't remove this scene entirely. You can't skip the musical scenes, it's part of the story. Dancing Through Life might be nearly 10 minutes long, but so much happens. Piero convinces everyone to go to the ballroom. Bock asks Glinda out. She convinces him to ask Nessa instead. Then Glinda asks Piero out. Nessa tells Elphaba about the date and how grateful she is to Glinda, which makes Elphaba soften up to Glinda and then opens the door for their friendship to begin. This continues with Glinda giving Elphaba her hat. Then everyone goes to the ballroom and dance. Bock thinks about confessing to Nessa that he doesn't really like her, but then sees Glinda and Piero and changes his mind, instead reaffirming to her that he does like her and taking her to the dance floor. It's 10 minutes of music, but it's also 10 minutes of movie. The plot keeps going. In the Emerald City sequence in The Wiz, the rich people are being fancy for 7 minutes. By the end, you almost forget that the main characters are even there because they say and do nothing for so long. I feel like in half the songs in the movie, the plot just grinds to a halt so that we can watch a musical number, and then the plot continues only after it ends. That being said, it's not like you have to suffer through the songs are fucking awesome. It's just that they throw off the pacing of the movie. It's more like listening to an album, but with all the music videos being connected, and with some scenes in between to give context. If you see it this way, it's very enjoyable. It's full of inventive ideas, visually, musically, it's all there. So overall, I would still place this in the A tier, but someone with a different musical taste might put it lower. The Wizard of Oz anime. This is another one I watched as a kid. I think it was the first time I was really able to follow everything, as it was aired dubbed to my language instead of subbed. I didn't rewatch this show for the video because I'm afraid it would not be as good as I remember it being. What I remember most from it is the gang warming up against the fire in the dark woods. That's what the show was about, the journey. In the MGM movie, getting from Munchkinland to the Emerald City is probably like a 20-minute walk, right? Discounting song and dance stops. Dorothy basically skips the whole way through. That's not a journey. A moderately fit Munchkin can get to the Emerald City and back in his morning jog.
People come and go so quickly here.
In the show, getting from place to place in Oz is a big deal. This is a treacherous road, a tough undertaking that takes days and weeks, and the gang needs to eat and sleep on the way. The show fleshed out the world, the different villages and environments and characters the gang stumble upon along the way. All had unique charm. They gave the characters more opportunities to connect, which made their goodbye in the end even more bittersweet. That show really made me realize how much this world had to offer. Plus, look at this Tin Man design. Don't you just want to give him a big hug? Just off of memory, I'm gonna guess, B tier. Return to Oz. This one scared the living shit out of me as a kid. The Stone King, the Headless Princess, the crazy-ass Wheelers. Dorothy has insomnia and gets put into a mental hospital to get electric shock therapy. It plays more like Alice in Wonderland than Wizard of Oz. Instead of landing in the dancing dwarf town, Dorothy lands in the deadly desert that turns everyone who touches it into sand. The yellow brick road is fucking destroyed. All her friends turned into stone. In the MGM movie, Dorothy's gang are fantasy versions of the nice farm workers. Here, Jack Pumpkinhead is based on Halloween decorations, and TikTok is based on the fucking brain electrocution machine. Also, Dorothy is a lot younger in this, which adds to her vulnerability. This is the only movie ever directed by Walter Murch. Now, if you like movies, you might not know that name. But if you love movies, you gotta know that name. Write it down, kids. That's Murch with a U. The title of sound designer was basically invented for him. People used to think sound editing was a technical job. Match the sound to what you see on the screen. But Francis Ford Coppola saw what Murch was doing and was like, no, this guy is making art. He reinvented how we think about recording and mixing sound as one of the creative pillars of a movie. Murch made sound not just complement visuals, but expand on them, making moments feel different than they look. This is what Murch brought to every movie he worked on, and that's the vision he brought when directing. The soundscape of Oz shines, the wheelers squeaking with rust, the stone rumblings that you know the king's spies are around. The evil princess sounds sharp and metallic, even though her spikes are clearly made of plastic. Jack sounds like light, gentle twigs. He sounds like he could fall apart at any given moment. TikTok is like heavy clockwork, but also has these assortment of pumps and pumps that make him sound cute. Listen to the sound of his footsteps climbing the stairs. Then in the hallway. And finally in the throne room. This is 3 different designs for one character's footsteps in the span of less than a minute in the film. The sound is so rich. Listen to the effect they did on the James Earl Jones impersonator.
You believe that I have stolen something, Dorothy, and you want me to give it back.
They put a sound effect on his lips touching. They didn't have to do that. The sound is really what brings these puppets to life. They're all amazing looking, but if you watch on mute, they're kind of stiff, naturally. If in the original movie I said there's so much character in how the characters move, in Return to Oz, there's so much character in how these characters sound. But the sound is not all. In addition to being one of the most revolutionary sound designers of all time, Walter Murch is also one of the most influential editors of all time. You know, just in case any of his siblings were not feeling inadequate. His book, In the Blink of an Eye, is considered essential reading for any young editor. So it's no wonder this movie's editing is practically flawless. The guy literally wrote the book on editing. And when I say flawless, I don't mean there aren't any continuity errors. Murch's theories of editing are about how to cut for emotion, first and foremost. That's what makes a movie pull you in. When every cut is perfect for the emotion of the scene, you don't really care about continuity. You don't even notice the pacing of the movie, you're just immersed in the story. The only frustrating thing about this movie is that watching it makes you wish Murch had continued directing. It's a fucking amazing, unsettling fantasy adventure movie for the whole family. Must watch for anyone who's even vaguely familiar with The Wizard of Oz. S tier for sure. Now, what else is there? Things got crazy, especially once the book entered the public domain and anyone could do anything with the IP without paying or even asking permission. All hell broke loose. There was, of course, the expected cheap cash grab animations. Tim Burton did a pilot episode that was never picked up. There was crossovers with the Muppets and Tom and Jerry. There were a couple of live action attempts. There was one where they tried to ride off of the success of the Avengers. For some reason, there was one where Scarecrow and Tin Man try to go to Kansas to look for Dorothy and then end up in a road trip to New York City. There was one that takes place in a post-apocalyptic America where the Wonderful Wizard of Oz is like their Bible. There was one called Apocalypse Oz that meshes up Oz with Apocalypse Now, so Dorothy has to go on a covert mission to eliminate an insane renegade colonel codenamed the Wizard. There was an edgy teen drama show.
Welcome to your life. Without options.
And then there was Tin Man. How do you explain the lore of Tin Man? It's 4.5 hours long, and half of it is the characters trying to figure out what the fuck is going on, because either their memories got sealed away by magic, or surgically removed, or they were in hibernation for years, or they just don't know shit. So they just wander around the whole time being like,
Where am I?
Who are you?
Who? What is it?
What's a head case?
What's that?
What's a tin man?
Apples? What is that?
What's this? What's this?
Grey Gale. What is the Grey Gale?
Apples.
What is it?
What's a Sunseeder?
What is this?
What is it?
What's that? What happened here?
What happened?
What just happened? It was all fake.
That was all fake?
Never happened.
Who's a homo?
Who's no Will?
Whose mother?
That's my mother? You're my father? Who's buried here? Mystic Man?
The Mystic Man?
Where can we find the Mystic Man?
Is he still in Central City?
Where can we find the Seeker? Where can we find the Seeker? Nurturing units? Inhale the magic?
Ice Mountain?
Behind D, Psycho Mantis.
Robots?
South? How? What does that mean? Which way now? Why are they bowing?
Why did it attack now?
And haven't dogs and cats been known to predict earthquakes? And what about this unusually shaped chair?
What mine?
Where? That's bad, right? Isn't that good?
What sort of machine? What's it for?
Was I asleep? That was last night. How can I tell you what I don't know? How can he remember if I can't?
Trust me, the realm of the unwanted is here. Somewhere.
You think we came here?
Got me, Donald.
There is something a bit Kingdom Heartsy about it. In the way that it's a big glumber convoluted anime plot about the ancient forces of light and darkness, with the pop culture references just happening to be there. The tornado is a portal for Nazi assassins. The wizard is sometimes called the Magic Man, but some call him the Wizard. Tin Man used to work his security detail back in the glory days, but now he's addicted to a special kind of emerald drug that the evil sorceress cooks up. She is actually Dorothy's long-lost sister, but our Dorothy is not the real Dorothy. Toto is a shapeshifter magician who used to be a trusted member of the Queen's court, but after the revolution got locked up by the evil sorceress, but then escapes prison, but then betrays the gang for personal gain. You see what I mean? The villain's ultimate plan is to shroud the world in darkness. I think that's also what happens in Kingdom Hearts. It takes just a little bit from every huge convoluted fantasy franchise and cooks up its own funky soup. The magic compass that leads you to your heart's desire off of Pirates of the Caribbean, that's in this. In Star Wars you had the binary sunset, here you got the binary sunrise. If you like Harry Potter, you'll be happy to find that the witch has 7 horcruxes that come out of her tits. The visual effects here are a bit better than Birdemic Shock and Terror. Zoe Deschanel is nonchalant and bored the whole way through, like she doesn't care about the plot for shit. Her friends might be dead, she seems mildly annoyed.
You are twisted.
You're like so evil. The rest of the characters are pretty well cast, the standouts being Alan Cummings and Neil McDonough. I do like this radical new interpretation of Oz. They crafted a decently interesting world to dive into if you're into this sort of lore-focused media. I like the little zipper on the head of the Scarecrow-esque character. I like that Munchkinland is like a little Ewok village on the trees. I like that there are all these original, all new locations in Oz that we've never seen before.
The Northern Island.
The Northern Ireland? C tier. Sam Raimi is the director of the Evil Dead trilogy and the Alive Good Guy trilogy.
I had to beat an old lady with a stick.
Raimi's signature goofiness is a perfect match for Oz. His movies are incredibly sincere, creative, and extravagant, and that's exactly what Oz needs to be, at least in theory. This is the first Oz movie since 1939 to really lean into being a spectacle. You have all these shots where you know the filmmakers expect you to go, "Whoa, look at that!" The problem is that even though the effects are still fine, the green screen compositing is like way wrong. It doesn't feel like anything is actually there. I mean, look at this. What the hell is this frame? Only bad movies are ugly. Another problem is I think they wanted me to watch the movie in 3D. You have all these shots that I think are supposed to be like a 3D show-off spectacle. Like, oh my god, this thing is so close to my face. It seems they really thought 3D was their Technicolor. We all know how that turned out. So yeah, the movie starts out in Kansas because apparently you can only go to Oz from tornadoes in Kansas specifically. This girl asks Oz to make her walk again and I thought, oh, she believes his show. But then her parents start to beg him to help her as well. Then the whole audience starts yelling at him to cure her. I mean, I know it's been a while since 1900, but it's not like believing in magic times. These are grown adults that think this guy has actual magic powers and he uses them to make people levitate in a carnival tent for pocket money. They're actually angry, calling him like a hack fraud for not curing her. I mean, story-wise, it's meant to foreshadow him being a sham wizard in Oz, but there's something broken about that premise that he's supposed to be this kind of sleazy scam artist for putting on magic shows in a circus. And that's his main character arc. He goes from hating himself for what a piece of shit he is for doing circus tricks.
Many things, but a good man is not one of them.
To then learning that he can be a good person and that make-believe magic can have a power of its own. I mean, he's mostly a piece of shit for being mean to everyone around him and lying to women so they'd have sex with him. And that he doesn't learn a lesson about how that's wrong. The movie also feels the need to explain why the Wicked Witch is green, which is a trend another prequel will follow. Don't worry, I'm getting to Wicked soon. But I just want to say, it doesn't need to be explained. I mean, in the book, she's not green, and in the movie where she is green, her entire race of people is green. It's assumed that everyone in the West are green people. It's never like a strange thing where you have to wonder why is the Wicked Witch green. So it's odd that it's such a big deal in two different prequels. It would have been nice if Oz ever actually cared about Mila Kunis, so her turn to the dark side would be impactful. He actually doesn't give a shit. He does the minimum possible effort to turn her back. Just, to check the box of I tried to tell her being bad is bad. Doesn't feel any responsibility for mistreating her. Doesn't feel that he needs to go out of his way to save her. I mean, there could have been a plot about how seeing her turn to the dark side makes him see the error of his ways, and he's desperately trying to find an antidote to cure her. But in the end, he fails in that. He saves the city, but she's too far gone, and he learns that some mistakes can't be undone. And he grows as a person. Instead, his character growth is to believe in himself. And it's approximately the 1 millionth fantasy movie where an outsider gathers a ragtag group of rebels to overthrow a dictator. It's the default fantasy plot, we've all seen it. I had just watched Tin Man, so I already had my fill of this shit. What is special about this one is that they do it with all smoke and mirrors. They use their brains instead of violence. The Gandhi way. There was mostly one really clever trick they did. I wish there was more. There's definitely a lot more potential for slick tricks in the idea of a circus magician staging an uprising, and that's just not fully used here. They brought in China Country from the book, except here they call it Chinatown, and just immediately destroy it.
Forget it, Jake. It's Chinatown.
They meet a China doll in a China house. Is her house made of flesh or is she made of house? We'll never know. Anyway, she's the best character in the entire thing. I also like that Oz gets to make a girl walk. He couldn't do that in our world, but now he can. That's a nice payoff to the other scene. That's basically the saving grace of this movie. C tier as well. Which brings us to...
Oh, wicked! That's really cool, that is.
Wicked is directed by Jon M, director of Crazy Rich Asians. If Crazy Rich Asians felt a bit like an early 2000s throwback, Wicked straight up is an early 2000s throwback. They go to shiz, for God's sake. Shiz! In like a third of these songs, I'm expecting someone to start breakdancing. Wicked is like Mean Girls in Oz, and it looks like it too. The lighting is flat, the colors are desaturated. It's shot more like a 90s, early 2000s college comedy than a tragic fantasy film. It's part of a whole new trend of movies that seem to think contrast is unrealistic and somehow takes the audience out of the experience, which is quite possibly in the top 5 dumbest things I've ever heard, especially when you're talking about a movie with exaggerated theatrical characters and big spontaneous musical numbers. The whole reason people are drawn to this kind of movies emotionally is because they take you to an unreal world, to a heightened world where you can have heightened feelings. Personally, I think even dramas usually benefit from contrast and more expressive color grades, but to present a fantasy musical in glorious S-log is just shooting yourself in the foot. My other biggest nitpick with Wicked is that it suffers from a bad case of prequelitis. It just has to explain the origins of everything. It starts off with an explanation of why she's green. Fine, if you want to make that relevant to the story, explain it. But then it starts explaining how she got her hat, and how she got her broom, and how she got her cape. She was cold. That's the explanation. And how Glinda got her name, and how the flying monkeys got their wings, and why the yellow brick road is yellow. It's her, she picked the color. The wizard asked her, I'm making a road, what color should it be? And she said yellow. She picked the yellow brick road. Oh, and look, it's the cowardly lion. He's a little cub. They're abusing him. That's why he's cowardly. Oh, shut up. It's one of the most egregious examples of an over-explaining prequel. But the confusing thing is that it's not even a prequel to anything in particular. It clearly does its own thing and deviates drastically from the book and from the MGM movie. It does not work as a tie-in at all. Now, I'm all for deviating from the source material, but then why are you also pretending to be a prequel? Those scenes are so unnatural and equally unnecessary. It tries to have its cake and eat it too. The art direction also betrays the story in this way. It's way too similar to the MGM movie, too afraid to do its own thing, too reliant visually on nostalgia. The opening title tries to imitate the MGM movie, even though Wicked already has its own perfectly fine logo in the marketing. Speaking of the marketing, the whole thing is basically marketed as the green and pink movie.
Pink goes good with green.
Both these colors associating with these characters originate from the MGM movie. I get it, the MGM movie's art direction is genius and iconic, but it exists already. What can you add that's unique to your version? It's again in this weird middle ground where it's not similar enough to be a tie-in, and it's also not inventive enough to be its own thing. It would be like if by the end of Joker, Joaquin Phoenix looked almost exactly like Jack Nicholson's Joker. And the movie included scenes explaining how he got his cane and how he got his jacket. It would be weird, those are different, contradictory versions of the character. So, the art direction reflects that. Phoenix still looks recognizably like the Joker, but he has those blue triangles around his eyes, the red nose and eyebrows, that's not in any other version. He wears red instead of the classic purple. All that signals to the audience that that's a new Joker, that's not supposed to tie into any previous movie. Going back to Return to Oz, it too had recognizable, but still brand new designs for each character. Wicked doesn't have that. If you haven't seen the original in a while, you probably won't even notice that they changed the angle on the hat, or that the broomstick is now made of oak wood instead of pine wood. People ask, why didn't Glinda tell Dorothy that she could go home anytime with the magic slippers? Well, I don't know. Why didn't she tell her there were express train lines to the Emerald City? She wouldn't have to walk the whole way in those uncomfortable ass shoes. I don't know if it's the marketing or just my own misconception, but I was sure this is gonna be a villain origins movie. You know, they treated her like a monster until she became one kind of deal. A movie like Falling Down, where you can sympathize with all the reasons that made the protagonist snap, but at the same time, he still crosses some lines that shouldn't be crossed. And in his understandable rage, takes it too far.
I'm the bad guy? How'd that happen?
It's not that. It's she was not bad at all, just misunderstood story. More Maleficent than Joker. Nothing inherently wrong with that kind of story, but we lose on some potential complexity. Now, part 2 hasn't come out yet, so the verdict is still pending on the story. But I just can't imagine this woman turning into
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too.
Elphaba, kill the dog? Aren't you an animal rights activist?
My heart's desire is for you to help the animals.
By the way, that's a good screenwriting trick. When you're writing good guys, make them love animals. When you're writing bad guys, make them hate animals. It's just like John Wick, it works every time. Now, I haven't seen the stage show, so I don't know what happens in part 2, but I also do. Actually, I have a genius theory about what happens in Wicked 2, but I can't share it with you guys because the information is already out there. So if I'm right, people will say I read it off of Wikipedia, and if I'm wrong, people will say I'm stupid. So this is a lose-lose situation for me. Anyway, it's really hard to say anything about this story at this moment because it's not over. So far, the movie is good. I liked it a lot, okay? It might not sound like it because I said it's pale and over-explaining and predictable and the art direction is a misguided ripoff, but I enjoyed the story so far. The 2 leads are great. I think the songs are great. No muted trumpet solos, so not perfect, but still great. The pacing surprisingly works, and I got to care a lot about Elphaba and her journey, and I even got a little emotional at times. There is something inherently silly about the idea of making a Wicked Witch of the West origins movie about how she was a vegan in college. But in Oz, it can work. You can do this shit in Lord of the Rings. With Oz, you can do just about anything. That's the beauty. It continues the lineage of Oz stories coming completely out of left field, but also pays homage to previous iterations. The entire thing is designed to evoke the MGM movie, but there's more. In the background in this part you can see a desert. If you look at the map, that's actually the Deadly Desert, and Peter Dinklage plans to cross it using an underground tunnel, just like in Return to Oz. In The Wizard's Garage you can see a poster for Oscar Diggs. In Wicked the characters sing "What is this feeling?" and in The Wiz they sing "Is this what feeling?" It's all connected. Big B tier for Wicked. And last but least, The Wizard of the Emerald City. This is the latest release at the time of writing, and uniquely, it's from Russia. Oh, we are not in Kansas anymore, alright. Of all the weird shit we've seen today, probably the weirdest is seeing this distinctly American tale in Russian. The reviewing motion picture made in Russia, Raimi does not condone any action taken by the Russian military and or government and or state authorities in the past present of freedom, which really should be obvious but somehow isn't for the people. Visually, the movie is incredible. There's nothing to say. It's detailed but not over-designed. It looks both fantastical and lived in. The outdoor scenes are especially stunning. It's a beautiful blend of practical and CGI effects that is on par with the biggest Hollywood productions. And while other movies we talked about mostly try to recreate the visual identity of the 1939 movie and just bring it up to a modern standard, this movie uses these modern tools to craft an all-new visual interpretation of Oz. Unfortunately, this is where the compliments end. The marketing term for it, I believe, is geared towards younger audiences. That's what we're calling PG movies that suck now. Ellie, their version of Dorothy, is an iPhone kid who can't get her face out of the screen to enjoy the family trip. Of course, in Oz, she learns to appreciate walking in nature, but not before she spends half the yellow brick road looking for reception. I don't like this. You know what else I don't like? Glinda in the MGM movie. It always bothered me that there is this all-powerful witch that comes to greet Dorothy, tells her exactly what to do, and then fucking skips town and meets her at the end. It takes away from Dorothy's journey that she's being guided and protected by a guardian angel the whole way through, and at the same time it raises the question, well, if she's so powerful and cares so much, why doesn't she help more? It robs Dorothy of risk and agency. It's a very popular complaint about this movie. A modern retelling has an opportunity to rectify that, to address that. Here, they double down. The Good Witch tells Ellie that she needs to go to the Emerald City and, on the way, find 3 magical creatures who each have a wish and take them with her. Ellie is basically a puppet in her own story. Why couldn't she decide to help them by herself? Why make everything she does orders from a fairy? Who prefers this? I don't think kids really get excited about a protagonist who does exactly what they're told the whole time. It's against one of the first rules of drama. The protagonist doesn't have to be like a punk rule breaker, but they have to make their own decisions throughout the story. That's what makes them protagonists. Now, you might not know this, but in the Oz canon, in like the 6th book or something, it's revealed that Toto could speak all along and he just had nothing to say, like Silent Bob, which is dumb, but in this movie, Totoshka, as he's called, lands in Oz and immediately becomes generic annoying talking animal sidekick number 1, which is worse. It's all a shame because I would really have loved to see a Wizard of Oz movie that looks like this and is not incredibly cringy. But I guess we'll see what happens in part 2, right? Oh yes, this too is a part 1. Suka bled. Did I say that right? D tier, you tried. Over the last 125 years, people all over the world have been enchanted by the land of Oz. We got incredible variety of passionate creations made with love and dedication. And we had some of the greatest masterminds of cinema do their own creative, unique, imaginative takes on the story. Wizard of Oz at the Sphere expanded with AI. Why? Why would you do this? Is it to mock the art of cinema?
It's beautiful, isn't it?
No! Do I really need to explain to you why generating more performance out of a dead actor, or generating more set from a dead set designer, or ruining the framing of a dead cinematographer is an insult to the act of creation and thus the god himself? You're going to hell, and please take this shit with you. I don't want to see it. None of this, none of that. No, stop. This ends here. It can't go any further. I will drop a house on the sphere.
It's easy to be dazzled by all this advanced technology.
Fucking throw it into a black hole, Tyr.
When I wake up in the afternoon, as it pleases me to do, don't nobody bring me no bad news. 'Cause I wake up already negative and I'm lighting up my view. So don't nobody bring me no bad news.